Hello, Positive Presence family. How are all of you? I am so excited to be on here. My name is Katlyn. I am the general manager and a mentor coach with Positive Presence. And I am here with someone very, very special to me and dear to my heart. My brother, Katlyn Cleaver, is joining us today on the Positive Presence podcast. This is the summer Coaches Takeover edition, and we are wrapping up the final 2 episodes. And it is an honor of mine to have him join me today to talk about various things. I think that we're definitely going to touch on a lot of different sibling dynamic stuff, individual struggles that we've experienced together, as brother and sister, but also just observing each other go through as individuals, and how, we see these things come up often in mentor coaching whenever we're talking to parents and the struggles that their teens are facing with either, not having a good or strong bond with their siblings, or just struggling to raise very different humans, because one sibling comes out a certain way and then the other comes out another way. And sometimes that can make it difficult on the parents whenever they're trying to raise them. So we're going to touch on a few of those topics and, just hope that we can bring some support and some guidance and comfort to all of our listeners and let them know that they're not alone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that would be really important to talk about is Caleb and I are very different in our day-to-day functioning and our personalities. I'm pretty type A, very, pretty social. I've always just adapted to, I think, these just traditional, like, American values of, going to school, getting good grades, getting a job and working 9 to 5. That's kind of just like, I've always had that type of work ethic and that personality type. And for our parents, that was pretty easy to raise. And Caleb, I want to give you the opportunity to kind of talk about what that was like being a younger sibling and watching me function the way that I did on a day-to-day, and how you felt different, and how that looked for you coming from, your own personal standpoint, but also how our parents struggled with adapting to our 2 different personalities.
Yeah. Whenever I was younger and Caitlin moved out of the house, it got more difficult because it felt like they were attacking me. But now that I'm older, I do see that it's not really attacking me personally. It's just how they raised their firstborn compared to me, and they were expecting to be able to do the same thing with me. And like you said, you're a lot more social and accepting and everything. And I mean, I'm accepting, I'm just not as social. And I'm very socially awkward when it comes to conversations and things. And I'm able to get my word across better whenever it's like online than it is in person.
Yeah.
Because I'm able to take my time to find the right words instead of just saying what's on my mind in person and then regretting it later. But you have been able to do that in person and be able to find the right words in person faster than I have always been able to. And that's what it's been hard for them. They've gotten a lot better because it's just taken time for me to explain how I'm feeling. And it still is hard for me to explain how I'm feeling. It's just really hard to, like I said, find the right words in person, especially to my parents, what I go through and what's going through my head, especially if they don't know what's going through my head. And like I said, hard to explain it in person with not knowing what words to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think it would have been beneficial to have had some sort of like virtual mentor coach or sort of resource to, talk to about like how you were feeling and how you could communicate to mom and dad the things that you were feeling, how you were different than me and you are different than me. And sometimes, we have to approach those like individuals, as individuals is not as a collective, even though you and I had such a tight bond. I think they just assumed that because our relationship was so strong that we were just, very similar in our, in our functionality. But really we were just very different. And I think that's why our bond was so strong, is
Yeah.
because we, where you were different, I was strong, in that area. And where I was lacking, some
Yeah.
strengths, you showed up and you were there for me. And you were able to sort of, fill that void. So what do you think that like a virtual mentor coach or some sort of like virtual platform would have done for you at such a young age, versus finding that comfort now?
I think it's less how do I word it? I would say it's less aggressive as it would be in person.
Yeah. Okay.
It's more relaxing. You're in your own home. You can find a relaxing place in your own house, whether it be your bedroom, wherever, or even in somewhere in your like in your own house, your own belongings, and you could surround yourself with comfort things other than being like. I think therapy is amazing. It's just obviously it's finding the right one and right place that is the struggle. And if you're not comfortable in those places, you're not going to want to keep going. And so I think online mentoring or life coaches online would 100% been completely helpful for me at a younger age, because like I said, more comfortable at home. I could be alone in my room if I wanted to, and if I wanted to bring along my parents in the call and have them listen in and just listen and not blurt out whatever they wanted to, and just listen to the coach and me talk, and so they can hear what I'm feeling and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about you mentioned a lot about how you were feeling and how that was hard for you to communicate. And I think, well, I know just because you were pretty connected, but you have recently over the last few years have gone through some assessments and
Yeah.
some discovery for your own mental health. And I think that provided a lot of clarity for you. But I think it's really important for a lot of our listeners who maybe were feeling the same way that you were for a long time and you didn't have answers. It didn't make sense as to why you were feeling the way that you were. It was really, it came out as like aggressiveness, or anger, rage,
Hmm.
frustration, before you were able to find those answers. So talk to us a little bit about your mental health journey and how important it is for us to seek some
Hmm.
support and answers as to why we're feeling the way that we
Yeah.
are, and explaining those feelings to others.
So I would say for me, I'm going to start with the basic one. I would say ADD/ADHD. It for me, it started like in middle school, like eighth grade to high school, and I was diagnosed then. It started getting worse, so we got different dosage, different prescription, and it that I could honestly tell it helped me. I was so stubborn when I was younger. I didn't want to take it because I was like, I don't want to always have to rely on this to have energy to stay focused. But now that I'm older, I do realize that I need it if I want to be productive throughout the day. And it's not a bad thing. And that's what I always thought, was that it's a bad thing that I need this. And it's, you know, you're different. You're so different than anybody else. Well, everyone's different no matter what.
Yeah.
And then it became, I had a form of depression and I started taking medicine for that. And then with how my mind works, I would always be like, oh, I have to take this because I'm depressed. And it made me more sad. So I stopped taking it. I started living a lifestyle of, oh, well, just smile, be happy. And then what I've learned for me is what makes me happy is making others happy. And so I've not had to take any more of that medicine. But then recently, I'm not going to say the company because I don't want to dog on them, but I was fired from a job because I was working too slow for them, but every single job that I did was right. And I was like, why am I getting punished for this? And then so we went to get me tested and I found out that I had just right OCD. And then that answered so many answers for me as to why I was always lacking in my speed when it come to the workforce and everything. And I was just like, that makes so much more sense. And now that I have that, I have paperwork to show any other future companies or any other jobs that I do get that I do have this. And if they're willing to work with me a little bit longer and wait for me to finally catch up in the long run, that I will be worth it. So it definitely is worth going and seeking answers.
Mhm.
It's it's not saying that something is wrong with you at all,
Yeah.
because no matter what, everyone's different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what some of the things that you were noticing that align with the OCD diagnosis that you had? Like I think that a lot of the times parents come to us and not to say that, their teen has a diagnosis, but I think sometimes just seeking that outside support, whether it is through
mhm,
a coach or whatever kind of mental health support they're needing. Some of those signs I think were really prevalent in your childhood,
yeah,
and I think if like I know that we talk about mental health a lot more now in our society, but I think in the early 2000s,
yeah,
it wasn't really talked about, and so like our parents or even myself, like we didn't see those signs as, oh, maybe he just needs some additional unbiased support, because he's struggling with this. We just saw it as laziness or lack of
yeah.
motivation, or slow processing speed or whatever that is. So I guess kind of talk about like some of the things that you've noticed in your behavior and the thing like your day-to-day functions that tie directly into that OCD.
So whenever I went and got tested, obviously before it, I never noticed it because you don't think about it unless somebody brings it up and suggests that, hey, maybe this is this, maybe this is that. Um, I noticed that there would be times I'd like walk through the kitchen. I'd grab the same exact knob on the drawer and I'd twist it because it's loose every single time. And I still do it to this day. And I don't know why. I don't need to get in that drawer. I just do it because it has become a habit for me. And then I have noticed that when I'm working or when I'm outside in the garage or something like that, if I have an idea, I want to try it because I think deeply because I think of things like puzzles for me, and that's an easy way for me to diagnose things is just thinking of it as like a puzzle, break it down as a puzzle and then put it back together. And then not a lot of people do that. And so whenever I think about it, I try to suggest that. And then those who are already doing it say, no, 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 let's just do this. And I get a little frustrated and then I break down.
Yeah.
And then in the morning, I have a specific routine habit. Like I need to get up, I need to put my contacts in first, brush my teeth, then get dressed. I can't get dressed, then brush my teeth and put my contacts in. It's just, I
Mhm.
have to have it that specific order in the morning. And then obviously it's different for other people. People brush their teeth at night before they go to bed. Some people brush their teeth, then get dressed, then go to bed or something like that. But those little things that you wouldn't think about being an OCD like issue might be, and then you finally notice it and you actually look at what you're doing throughout the day and you finally notice, oh hey, these are little things that I have and nobody else really does.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that that's a really good point in just the different ways that you and I existed in the house.
Hmm.
Like it was really easy for mom and dad or really any of our, adult supervisors, teachers, what have you, they were able to come to me and say, go do this. And then I would just be able to go and do it in whatever way that they need me to do it. Even something as simple as like switching the laundry or vacuuming the house or whatever it was. I was somebody that was able to because I didn't have that habitual, like mentality where I had to do it this way, this way, this way. I was able to just, get up and do these things. And for our parents, they were like, "Oh, well, this is easy. There's nothing wrong with Caitlin." And then they would tell you something, and they were like, "Wow, like what is wrong with Caleb?" And it's,
Yeah.
instead it really was just he needed some extra time and some
Mhm.
extra patience and
And
some
I
grace
and questions like
and question.
I would always ask like, okay,
Yeah.
do you want me to do it like this, blah 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 blah. And
Yep.
then there'd be times like I wouldn't ask questions and then do it, and
Yeah.
then they would be like, okay, well, did you do this? I'm like, no. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but I wasn't told that specifically.
Right.
So like a big thing when it comes to parents wise, being specific on like what you want done is definitely would have helped me
Yeah.
as a like younger age. And
Mhm.
just so that because I've always felt like I was a burden whenever I would constantly ask questions.
Yeah.
And I have always grown up like that whether it came to friends or relationships or family in general.
Yep.
I would always felt like I was a burden because I would always ask so many questions, and so I could get the right answer as to what they want me to do or like the moral of the story. Like I always want specific answers, so I would ask questions and then I would stop asking questions because I felt like I was a burden. So like that's why I'd say as parents it would definitely would help to like be specific
Yeah.
on what like when you want your kid to like do something around the house,
Mhm.
write it down actually helped me a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think just communication, period, you
Yes.
know, from parents to not just I think well, I think it's twofold. I think as, you know, a family collective,
Yeah.
communication is important, but I think, you know, having individual relationships with each of your children is going to be really important because um I mean our parents did an incredible job raising us,
Yeah.
and I think that they tried to have the exact same relationship between you and them and me and
Mhm.
them. And then, you know, there was a lot of like missed opportunity there because
Yeah.
they tried to treat us the same and it was a little different.
Mhm.
So with that, you mentioned you touched on the comfort that you found in computers, you know, or just like virtual platform, which again was very different than what
Very.
my generation, you know, really had been exposed to.
Mhm.
But I do know that like the younger generations, oh, I think it really started with like your generation,
Yeah.
and the generations that are coming into our company right now as students. It's very tech driven, you know, very virtual. And I think it's really hard for parents to understand, you know, what the desire is, you know, how they
Yeah.
can find comfort. And then I guess touching on like how they can safely allow their kids to engage in this new, you know, new lifestyle.
Yeah.
Also, you know, setting really healthy boundaries, right?
Um obviously there's a lot of ways you can go about um making everything safe. Like you can get like with your internet company, you could block certain websites and everything. But depending on like your kid, that to them that could be hovering. If you just I would say just talk to them. But yeah, online it is scary and it I can understand it being completely scary, but I would say have trust in them. Ask them, don't hover, but like ask them like what's going on, if they're doing okay and everything. But I for me, comfort on the internet is because I am able to talk to them without them seeing my face. They're able
Mhm.
to hear my voice. There's no facial expressions to misread. And obviously tone of voice has a lot to do with it. But whenever it comes to just like meeting new friends or just talking to somebody in general online, if you don't have to see that face, I personally have found communication far more enjoyable online when it came to just interacting through voice chat.
Yeah.
But gaming, yeah, like my parents, it was so hard for them to like understand that was my out. That
Mhm.
was my out away from the long days that I would have. Like at school, I never felt like I was accepted. And that was okay with me because that made it, I felt like I matured a lot faster than those who I went to school with. But my game, like I said, gaming was my out. I was able to interact with people who are also like me on the internet, and we were able to explain each other how our day went and understand each other a lot more than those who haven't experienced what we go through. And so there's a big, I would say, pool out there on the internet for your kids to be able to see and reach others that are also within the same
Yeah.
interest of everything.
it sounds like a whole nother community,
Yeah.
I've never experienced it. I don't know, but I do understand that feeling of community and belonging, when you find your people.
Mhm.
Um, I think that was like for me, that point that when I found that sense of community was when I came out, which I know from your just like outside perspective of like watching me go through that. I didn't, as you know, I didn't come out till I was 18, and
Yeah.
um, part of a big part of that was because we were raised in and grew
S
up in a really small
Small
town.
town, yeah.
Um, and Caleb and I both, not only did we sort of go against the traditional gender norms of our gender identities. Caleb broke down a lot of those stereotypes. Caleb was a ballet dancer. He's
Mhm.
currently a yell leader for our local community college there. I played football. And so we were constantly breaking these gender norms. And at the same time, there was a lot of bullying that came from that. And home was always safe.
Yeah.
Mom and for the most part, mom and dad supported,
Yeah.
our passion, my passion with football, your passion with dance, dressing differently,
Yep.
learning, just having interest in different things that like a typical cisgendered male or female were interested in. And so, I mean, I think that a lot of the cues were there, for especially for you and dad, like you guys kind of had an idea that
Yeah.
I probably wasn't straight. But I didn't come out until I was 18. And that was when after I graduated high school and was able to kind of go off and like find my own community, right?
Yep.
And where I felt safe. And so just touching on community and what that was like for you, like watching me go through that. Talk to our listeners about like the importance of safety at home, just being
Yeah.
who you are, but also the things that you were able to provide as a support for me, as my brother who
Mhm.
accepted and loved me. But like what you kind of saw me go through and how that was really similar to you seeking community online.
Um, so obviously, like we've stated before, I was gonna say this a little earlier, but I would say her differences and her positives were, I would say, a jigsaw puzzle, like matching because of like how like different we are, but we, like you said, we fill each other's empty spots. And I would stick up for everything that sister like believed in, even at school when people would like say things that were not needed to be said. I would just bump in the conversation and be like, hey, that's not needed, blah, blah, blah. Even if it wasn't my conversation, I would hear it out of my ear and just butt in because it's just, I was trying to make it a norm for everybody, for anyone to be able to come out. And I feel like after I started doing that, personally felt like saw a lot more people coming out at my school that I noticed.
Mhm.
And I was just willing to listen to my sister and understand everything that she was like going through and understanding the whole community. And it made me like enjoy it even more because of like how accepting everything is. And then I would always try and convert everything into like what I'm going through. Like you said, you finding your community. Well, I found my community in either dance
Yep.
or online gaming, like gaming community. I would find that as my community. I would find the dance community as my other way out. I was able to just go to the dance studio if I didn't want to be at home and just be there. And even if I wanted to cry, they would be there and cry for me and let me cry on their shoulder. If I wanted to be at home and just be on my game and talk to my friends, they would listen to me and I would be able to vent to them.
Right.
And having that community is extremely important, I would say, for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that you and I both learned a lot from each other's struggles.
Yeah.
You trying to find the acceptance from older generations with the online gaming and from your own generation for being a very male dominant
Mhm.
person. You're an alpha, you know, you appear very alpha, and then you including yourself or involving yourself in like not alpha activity,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
by being in cheer and by being really passionate about dance and theater and Broadway and being okay with the judgment.
Yep.
But I think that speaks volumes to the love and acceptance that was always in the home.
Yes.
I think that, mom and I went through a little bit of our struggles when I came out. It was for a moment, it was really hard for her to understand. But I think at the end of the day, even when our relationship was a little broken, there was always love in the home.
Yes.
And I felt that always. And so I would definitely tell, like a lot of our parents to lead with love, and acceptance first, because even if you don't understand, and you're struggling to find like a connection or relationship and that understanding with your child, as long as there's love and safety in the home, they're going to feel that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I really think that's what got Caleb and I through a lot of just our
Mhm.
struggles. I mean, the amount of bullying that we both experienced
Yeah.
was pretty intense. But for us, the comfort was going home at the end of the day,
Yeah.
right? I knew that I was able to hop on and watch like my silly reality TV shows, and Caleb was able to hop on his gaming, and
Yeah.
we just found the comfort there.
Or even
Uh,
YouTube for me. I would watch YouTube
yeah, or
videos all the
YouTube.
time. Yeah,
Yeah,
and not this generation, now TikToks and everything.
yeah,
But I would say that, like you said, lead with love. Even if you aren't getting the answers that you're wanting right away, if you lead with love, they will eventually come to you and
yeah,
give you those answers that you're wanting, that you have been asking for years or even months or however long in your head. Don't force the questions upon them, because it's, for me, it pushed me away more. And now they've understood that now, and so they do not ask like as many questions and as much. But I mean, they still do, obviously. At their parents,
yeah,
they're my parents. It's understandable as to why they want to ask all these questions. But for the younger ones, like middle school or high school wise, like you said, definitely lead with love, and then eventually they will come to you whenever they are willing to talk and know that there is love there and it's not going to be awkward.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I think sometimes that love doesn't, I know from just the experience working with this company is a lot of parents come to us or a lot of students come to us and they're like, my child just doesn't understand me, or my parents just don't understand me, and them seeking a mentor, or just an
Yes.
out and unbiased support, that's loving, that's loving your child, and that's
Yeah.
finding them ways to be themselves and speak freely to somebody that's there's no judgment and there's always
Mhm.
safety, and maybe they'll find community because it is virtual, um and so I would definitely say, like, if at any point I think like our parents, if they could rewind, they would have gotten us both mentors like
Oh
immediately,
yeah,
because they're
for
like,
sure.
you just don't understand that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that when I found positive presence and Michelle like brought me in, um she I've always felt the love first,
Hmm.
and it felt like home, right? Because I was like, oh, I've always been in a place where like love and acceptance was there. And I was like, I felt this before, like when I was talking to Michelle when I first found the company. I was like, I felt this feeling before. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's home. And that's really important to Caleb knows just from like hearing me talk about it. But uh, that feeling that a lot of our students feel when they talk to their coaches is that it's like another family member, or like a brother or a sister that they didn't.
Yeah.
Caleb and I are like the accept of, it's really hard to find siblings that are as close as him and I.
Yeah.
Um, and
Every
I
time
know,
I hear it, every time I hear like my friends say they're how close they are not with their sibling, I'm like, how? Like,
I know.
it's hard for me to understand how you can't be that close to your sibling with what I've had my entire life. And what's helped me is she's been able to be my voice sometimes towards
Mhm.
my parents if I have not been able to easily explain. Like I could step aside, or like a day before my mom and dad are going to talk with me, I could tell my sister what I'm feeling, and she'd be able to get my point across and what I'm feeling across to them for in a way that they would understand. Or even like my friends, I have friends that are in college from like England that are able to explain how I'm feeling and what I'm going through in a better way than I would be able to. And it's like a translator.
Yeah.
Having
Yeah.
a translator can help so much, would have helped so much for me
Yeah.
as like at a younger age.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. And for me, like you just always played the role of I like Caleb has always just been like one of the most accepting people that I know. Like I could have come to him and been like, Caleb, like I'm gonna go be like a deep sea diver, and he'd be like, all right, like tell me about it,
Yeah. I'd be like,
and
okay.
would just like love and accept me for it. And so there was never anything like too silly or too weird or too
Yeah.
just like off key that I could have gone to him with and him been like, that's weird, sis. Like you should probably like not talk about that.
Yeah.
He'd always be like, oh wow, that's really cool, and
Yeah.
there was just, I mean, I was always accepted. And so for me, growing up and not being able to like be who I was, the most authentic version of myself, I was able to always be that with him. And
And
I
my
think
version of that was dance.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I think the most important piece that we have both identified in this conversation is that having somebody to talk to who
Yes.
is free of judgment and a safe space is really, really important and would have been really beneficial for us.
Yeah.
Um, I think we had the biased version of that in each other, like we both kind of played the role of a mentor or, we wore many hats for each other, but I think it would have been even more impactful to have had somebody unbiased, to
Yes.
just seek some comfort and community,
Hmm.
you know? Yeah, yeah,
Like being the outside view
for
of
sure.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Bub, thank you so much
Yeah.
for being on this today. I love you. I appreciate you. And I hope that through our conversation together and this podcast that a lot of different listeners, from various ages, various roles, and communities are able
Hmm.
to know that they're not alone,
Yeah.
and that there's somebody out there that they can talk to and find community in. It's
Yes.
incredibly important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Communication.
Communication for
And
sure.
communication and tone of voice, it will go a long, long way, I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah, absolutely. Um, to our listeners, thank you guys so much for taking time to join us today and listen to our little podcast about just different sibling dynamics and how like there's so much value and love and acceptance at the foundation of every relationship that you can have inside of family or a family that you've created on your own. Family looks different for a lot of people, and so wherever you've found family and
Yes.
connection and community, lead with love and acceptance, and there's a lot of value and impact there. I think that's all, my friend. I love you so much,
Love you
and
too.
I really appreciate you being on this,
Yeah.
and I hope all of our listeners enjoy, and I will talk to you soon. Bye,
I
everybody.